You ever been in a place so quiet, every little sound feels like a shout? That's what Ethan thought every time he started his shift at the old Dalton warehouse. It wasn't the kind of quiet you find in a library. No, this quiet was heavy, like the building was holding its breath. Ethan was a night shift security guard, and he liked the solitude, mostly. He'd sit in the little guardroom at the front, monitor the cameras, and occasionally walk the floors. Not much ever happened. Except one night. It was just past midnight when Ethan first heard it, a faint whisper, like someone talking just out of earshot. He paused, turning the volume up on the security feeds, but all he could hear was the hum of the monitors. Probably the wind, he muttered to himself. But then it came again. This time, it was clearer, a low murmur coming from the old office on the second floor. The office had been locked for years, ever since a fire gutted the space. No one was supposed to go in there. Ethan radioed Hannah, the warehouse manager. "Hannah, you sure no one's up there?" "Positive," she replied, her voice calm. "That place has been sealed for years." "Why?" "Thought I heard something." "Probably nothing, but I'll check it out." Grabbing his flashlight, Ethan made his way up the creaky staircase. Each step groaned under his weight, adding to the eerie atmosphere. He reached the door of the old office and pressed his ear against it. The whispers stopped. "Okay," he said, more to himself than anyone else, "let's see what's going on." The door was locked, but Ethan had a master key. He turned it, and the door creaked open, revealing a room frozen in time. Charred walls, broken furniture, and papers scattered across the floor. The air was thick with the scent of smoke, even after all these years. He stepped inside, shining his flashlight around. That's when he saw them, strange marks on the walls. They looked like scratches, but they weren't random. They formed a pattern, almost like writing, but in a language Ethan didn't recognize. Before he could examine them further, the whispers returned, louder this time. Ethan spun around, his flashlight beam darting across the room. "Hello," he called out, his voice cracking slightly. No answer. Just the whispers, growing louder and more insistent. Ethan backed out of the room, his heart pounding. He locked the door behind him and hurried downstairs, his mind racing. He called Jake, the maintenance worker, to join him. When Jake arrived, Ethan explained what had happened. "No way," Jake said, shaking his head. "That place gives me the creeps. But if you heard something, we better check the cameras." Back in the guardroom, they reviewed the footage. That's when they saw it, a faint shadow moving across the second floor hallway, heading toward the old office. It stopped right in front of the door and then vanished. "What the hell?" Jake whispered. The two men stared at each other, the weight of the situation sinking in. Whatever was in that office wasn't leaving. And it sure as hell wasn't human. From that night on, the old Dalton warehouse was never the same. Ethan never worked a shift alone again, and the whispers, they never stopped. You ever work a job where the place itself feels alive? Not in a good way, though. I'm talking about the kind of alive that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up. That's what Sarah walked into on her first night at the Miller distribution warehouse. The place was massive, rows of towering shelves packed with crates, forklifts quietly parked, and a chill in the air that never seemed to lift. Mark, a veteran worker, gave her a quick tour, cracking jokes to lighten the mood. But even his usual cheers seemed a little forced. "Just keep your head down, do your rounds, and you'll be fine," he said, almost like a warning. The shift started smoothly enough. Sarah got into the rhythm of things, double-checking inventory, logging deliveries. Around midnight, though, she noticed something strange. A man in a yellow jacket was walking down one of the aisles, his footsteps soft but distinct in the quiet. Sarah didn't recognize him, and she hadn't seen anyone else come in. She called out, but he didn't stop or even turn. When she mentioned it to Mark, his face went pale. "Yellow jacket? You sure?" "Yeah," Sarah replied, confused. "Why?" Mark sighed, looking around nervously. "Years ago, a guy named Tom worked here. Always wore this bright yellow jacket. One night, he just vanished. Never clocked out, his car was left in the lot. The cops came, but they didn't find anything. After that, people started seeing him." "Seeing him? Like a ghost?" Sarah asked, half laughing but not entirely joking. "Call it what you want," Mark said. "But if you saw him, something's not right." Determined to prove it was just a fluke, Sarah checked the security footage. Sure enough, there he was, the man in the yellow jacket, walking calmly between the shelves. But what sent chills down her spine was what happened next. As Lucas, the delivery driver, arrived and started unloading crates, the man appeared on the screen again, this time standing directly behind him. Lucas turned, as if he felt someone there, but the camera feed glitched out for a second. When it came back, Lucas was gone. Panic set in. Sarah and Mark raced to the loading dock. Lucas's truck was still there, engine idling, but there was no sign of him. The only thing left was a single yellow jacket, draped over a crate. They never found Lucas, just like they never found Tom. After that night, Sarah quit, and Mark finally retired. The warehouse kept running, but everyone knew it was cursed. People whispered about the man in the yellow jacket, warning new hires to leave if they ever saw him. Because if they didn't, they might be the next to vanish. You ever get that gut feeling something's wrong? Like, before you even step inside, you just know? That's how Claire felt when she arrived at the Ridgeline storage warehouse. The place was old, way older than the shiny new distribution centers popping up in town. Its walls were stained with years of grime, and the parking lot was cracked and overgrown with weeds. Claire was a paranormal investigator, not the kind you see on TV, running around with night vision cameras and yelling at shadows. She was more methodical, grounded. She didn't jump to conclusions, but had seen enough to know that sometimes things couldn't be explained. This time, she wasn't alone. David, a skeptic journalist, tagged along for a story. He was here to debunk, not believe. Ghost hunters make great headlines, he joked. Mia, the warehouse owner, met them at the entrance. I've lost 3 employees this month, she said, her voice shaky. Not lost as in missing, they quit. They all claimed to see something near the old loading dock. Claire raised an eyebrow. What kind of something? A light, Mia said. It glows, moves around, like it's leading them somewhere. David scoffed. Probably faulty wiring. Claire and David set up their equipment and started their investigation at midnight. The warehouse was eerily quiet, the kind of silence that presses on your ears. Claire's EMF detector flickered as they moved toward the back. Anything yet? David asked, his tone teasing. Not sure, Claire replied, eyes fixed on the detector. But something's off. Just then, they both heard it, a faint hum, almost melodic. They followed the sound to the old loading dock. That's when they saw it, a faint, pulsing light, glowing in the corner of the room. It wasn't blinding, but it had a strange, hypnotic quality. David's skepticism wavered. What's causing that? He muttered. Claire took out her camera, but as soon as she hit record, the light flickered and disappeared. The hum stopped, and the room was plunged back into silence. "Did you see that?" Claire asked, heart racing. "Yeah," David admitted, for once at a loss for words. They searched the area and found an old, hidden door behind a stack of crates. Inside was a small room filled with dusty papers and strange symbols etched into the walls. In the center was an old lantern, the glass cracked but still faintly glowing. Claire picked it up carefully. "This must be what they were seeing," she said. "But why would it be here?" David shook his head. "I don't know, but I'm starting to think there's more to this place than faulty wiring." From that night on, Claire and David were drawn back to the warehouse, piecing together its dark history. The light never reappeared, but the memory of that night stayed with them. And for Claire, it was proof that sometimes, the truth really is stranger than fiction.